revenues, how much money we need. Every day I go to bed, I know we need a ton of money, and I know we've cut as far as we can cut reasonably without hurting the people in this village. You think we don't need a police department? There are residents in this town who disagree. And right now, as long as I'm mayor, we're gonna keep the police department, because when I moved here 35 years ago, that was an attraction to move to Indian Head Park. And I think there's trustees on this board who would disagree with your comment about not needing a police department. We need one. But that's it, water and nothing else, sir.
And that's the exact problem. That's the exact problem.
That's your
You're
opinion.
locked
Thank
in,
you.
you're locked in, you have no open mind.
No, I do have an open mind, you just don't know me.
If I can,
Go ahead.
while that
I'm
was
sorry, I didn't mean
happening,
to point with the, I
No,
had
that's
it in
all
my
right.
hand.
I looked
I didn't
up,
mean to point with that, I'm not trying to.
I looked up the information that Frank and his team provided. The 1 to 5 year short term for water was 1.3 million, the 5 to 10 years was 1.8 million. So that's over 3 million in 10 years. So that's, you know, rough math, 300,000 a year. So that may need to be modified or can be modified, but still it's gonna be a lot of money. So I think as, like Matt said, as we look at the increase, I think we should take into account the expenses. And I think what Mr. Corcoran said is there is a cost to provide the water to our residents more than just the cost of a gallon of water.
I agree, and I'm open-minded enough, trustee, to, we'll have an ordinance next week to at least pass along what they're gonna charge us effective the first of the year. And I'm open to whatever suggestion you, and if the board wants to go along with a higher increase, I'm open-minded to that. So, thank you for your comment. We're gonna move.
There's one last comment. Rich, or Frank, could you, when you give us those numbers, could you tell us when the last time we had a rate increase that added on to what was just passed on? I can't recall we had that, because I think that's a board person.
On and above the
Correct.
countryside.
We've always, I mean, it's for, I shouldn't say always, there was a period of time, a long time ago, where we didn't pass on the full amount initially. But at least for the last 4 or 5 years, as far as I can recall, we've always passed on the full amount. I don't recall we've ever added anything onto it beyond what was passed on to us. So if we could have that, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Next item of business is the approval of an ordinance amending Title 15, Building of the Municipal Code to adopt the 2014 National Electric Code, 2012 International Building Code, 2012 International Energy Conservation Code, 2012 International Fire Code, 2012 Property Maintenance Code, 2012 1 and 2 Family International Residential Code. The draft ordinance, has anybody had a chance to read all 58 pages? Tom?
Yes.
Matt, have you guys had a chance to read through all 58 pages? You ready?
I have a question.
My intent is, because I don't know about other trustees, we've had a couple other things that I've dealt with, and I have personally not had a chance to review all 58 pages of this draft ordinance. I understand, council, you had some comments that you could make for us with respect to review by the, in particular, the fire department, with respect to the code?
Yes.
This ordinance, excuse me.
If you notice how the ordinance is set up, the village is proposing to adopt several standard codes that are published either by the International Code Council or the National Fire Protection Association. And when you adopt those standard codes, it's customary that you also adopt amendments that tailor those standard codes to your individual municipality. I provided you with amendments to those national codes that are typical to communities in the suburban Chicago area. However, for example, under the International Fire Code, I suggested that the village send those local amendments to the Pleasant View Fire Protection District to have them review them to make sure that they're in accordance with what they feel is safe and prudent. Similarly, I suggested that the building code and the residential code, and the other codes that relate to construction in the village be sent to our plan review people, have them take a look at it to make sure that the local amendments are also in accord what they believe to be in the best interest of the community. So I think that the village needs some time to have the review by both the Pleasant View Fire Protection District and the code review people to give us some comments or viewpoint that they have on the local amendments to the standard codes.
Trustees, any questions, comments? So my intent would be that we forward a copy of the ordinance to the plan review people and the fire department for their review and comment, and consider this, with an eye toward absent issues that may come up, but with an eye toward finalizing it at the February board meeting. Trustee Henshaw.
Three quick questions. On page 47, talking about weeds, Frank, it says in excess of 8 inches. We had a discussion before the meeting about blight issues. Is that 8 inches? Is that reducing it from 12? I thought we had talked it was 12, or has it always been 8? My memory is bad, or something else.
I just went blank, so I don't know if it was 8 or 12. I can't remember.
And then this also
I
said
think
that,
it was 12, and it's coming down to 8. I want to
it
say.
says if the person doesn't do it, the village will go out and do it and charge the owner or agent. Any idea what we would charge?
It all depends, it says that, but first you have to give them the opportunity, you send out the letters, you do send out tickets if they don't do that. And if they ignore the ticket and don't come to court and it gets beyond, then we would go out and whatever company we can get to cut it and whatever they would charge us, that's what we would bill.
All right, last question. We went through a process with the Wilshire Greens and the exterior screening on the porch. I don't think there was anything in here specifically the Wilshire Green or any screening. Is that something we should consider, would you recommend?
It wasn't screening so much in particular, but there was something in the property code about inspecting things like that. So it is there. I mean, I'll double look at it now and see, and I could talk to our building people about it when they send them the ordinance, I could put that question in.
I know it was one of the issues the Wilshire Green people had. It wasn't specific or it wasn't in there, so as long as we're doing something.
Right, I'll send them we can highlight that in a letter to the building people, our building inspectors.
All right, so you think that'd be better than putting something in here?
Well, I would get their opinion first about it and see
Okay.
what these people are there.
Thank you.
On page 4, there's some spelling error, just to make note of that, Councilman.
Sure.
Building is spelled correctly on the bottom. And then,
In the head, yeah.
and just a note, because I didn't go through the fire part, and we probably will see it after Pleasant View, but are they inserting any kind of provision for sprinklers to be residential sprinklers? Because I know that's a hot topic in a lot of places. So what I didn't want to have happen, I didn't happen to see that in here, but are they going to be putting things in like that? Because in certain municipalities, they have a rule over 50% of the structure is changed. They may require some type of residential sprinkler, which I don't think is, I don't know if that's where we want to go or not, but can we make sure that we understand what if those requirements are in somewhere, or, I don't want to put those in if we don't have them now, if that's not what we intend to do.
I didn't see residential, but I saw commercial.
I saw that too, but I just want to make sure when it goes to Pleasant View, that we don't get something back that we don't all see.
Also ask the fire department to understand.
Well, my understanding is they're just gonna review this, and or not, if they recommend something, it's up to us to decide.
Yeah.
Because I think they still have some of their own codes. I believe, like in the townhouses, and I think Pleasantville has its own code for fire alarms.
Right.
Because I know when I bought there in Chestnut and Green, you had to have a fire alarm, but that was a Pleasantview fire code. That had nothing to do with
Anything else, trustees? Okay, we'll use this, we're not gonna take action here, we'll get the input, try to get the answers, and with an eye toward finalizing this particular ordinance regarding the various codes at the February board meeting. So I will couple that with, in general, questions or comments from the audience about the codes or any other non-agenda item matter. Trustee?
I heard from several residents, first was Elise Klimchek on Blackhawk, thanking, much like you did at the beginning, Rich, Frank, you and your staff for the excellent work over the holidays on the snow removal. Very much appreciated by the people I heard from.
Appreciate that.
The other thing that I heard about was on the website, there's a new update about a crime alert. Are there any new updates or information that you can pass along?
Nothing other than, you know, we're investigating it, there might be a few leads, but I say leads very cautiously on the 3 homes that were burglarized. As far as any detail, without giving out a lot of detail, because you certainly don't want to give out too much detail in case you do get a suspect. You don't want them to have all the information. But we don't, as far as the residents are looking at the 2 homes, nothing appeared to be taken right now, and just out of 1 home, some items appear, jewelry items appear to be taken. In each home, they only entered the 1 to 1 bedroom.
And it was all the same time, so
Yes.
probably related.
Probably related, yeah, that we're pretty sure of that they were related. And we narrowed the time down because there was 1 resident that left their home at 3 and then returned at around 7:30.
Thank you.
Mrs. Metz?
Hi, Joan Metz, 6403 Arrowhead Court. I have a couple of things that I wanted to ask about. The first one is the purchases ordinance. I was going back through, I don't know what you're talking about, acoustics. You cannot shut me up. I'm trying.
It's a little button I have over here.
It's not you I'm worried about, Tom. Shall I?
Can't stop it.
It's all right. I've been told I have a loud mouth.
Ms. Beth, would you come up so we can hear you?
Do I have to?
Well, otherwise, no, it's very hard with this.
That's okay. I just want to
Thank you.
take.
Yeah, grab the microphone.
I had a couple of questions. First of all, I was going back through minutes and notes of mine, and in October, you directed the village attorney to draft an ordinance about purchases. And I'm here every time. That's not been brought back up. And I feel like it's an important thing that I think should continue to be on the table and above the board on the table. So I'm wondering when we can see that ordinance.
I asked him to hold off on drafting the purchases ordinance so I could have a chance to review what we have in the code and check around with some other villages, and frankly, I haven't had a chance to do that yet. It's not off the table, it's just we haven't advanced it.
Can I say that I think in light of your announcement at the beginning of the meeting that Frank is going to be retiring, that I think it becomes more of a priority, at least from my perspective. You don't know who, and it'd be an opportunity that the board should be paying attention to what's going on with whoever comes in next. So the second thing I had was, there was also a comment in that same October meeting, and I mentioned this to you, Brian, so I don't want to be, my point is this. Tell me what form of government, Indian Head Park, what municipal form of government we are running. Because I feel like I've got it confirmed, but it's different than what I heard here at a meeting. So I would like the attorney to answer that, please.
Village, operate under the village president trustee form of government.
Okay, that's what I heard. I wanted to confirm that and make sure everybody knew. Do we have any, again, it's early. You had talked about having an inspection on the mold issue at the Heritage Center. That was in, I think, November.
Yeah,
Did we get anywhere with that?
which we did, it's not as bad as thought, the most, and right now we're looking at options. The most serious part is the basement, and the recommendation for the basement was just to get a more industrial dehumidifier, which we'll probably do, and then they found some mold spots, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, where we can just clean it. And they found what looked like water leaks, but those were old ones until we repaired it. So the mold, I believe, in the basement was higher than the outside air, but in the rest of the house, it was lower than the outside air. So
And then
there-
none of it was like that black mold or anything? we
And
didn't
that
think
could just
about?
be cleaned with bleach and spots, is what the report basically said. But as far as the air quality, wasn't it lower
Yeah.
inside than what the normal outside is? Just the basement has a higher, and they seem to think if we can seal that up, and right now get more, we have a little dehumidifier down there, but I think the recommendation was an industrial, commercial one, so that's what we'll be looking into now.
Okay. And what about the upstairs?
The upstairs was, they're the same.
No, I mean in terms of renting, leasing, use of
Oh,
the
I-
upstairs.
I don't know. I haven't had
Did they
any discussion.
vacate the upstairs as
Yeah,
they
they're
said?
vacated.
So anything up there, the desks and all that stuff that was.
Yeah, everything is the villages, what's there, overused,
Yeah.
Alright, because I wouldn't be surprised if the docents would want to use that for storage of the books for the sale, instead of a closet, like they've been using. I think that's it. Thank you.
I wanted to, we could talk about this, but I had a resident mention to me about if we do the street bond, how long are we gonna take to pay it back? I mean, we've talked about 10, 15, and 20 a year, and, the question was along the lines, or comment actually was, are we gonna try to pay it off in 15 years? And I said that we have not decided that, and if you recall, at the December meeting, the question came up that what's the length of time we're gonna take, because it's not included in the question for the street bond. And there was comments about 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I know I advocated, and I think a number of people did, for 15 years. The point is we can't make that decision. It's not been made, and we cannot make the decision at this time until we get approval to go forward with the street bond from the residents. And then our bond people will advise us at that point what the rates are. And once we know at that point what the rates are and what period of time, then we'll be able to go forward and make that determination. So I wanted to clarify that. That's the reason we have not set in stone what it is. Admittedly, I favor 15 years, a little bit lesser impact on the residents, but hey, if you get a good deal for a 10-year bond, why not do it? Again, I'm trying to be open-minded as to what it is that we want to go forward with. So I just wanted to bring that up, and just about that, I just got a couple more things related to that
Okay.
street bond, if you wait a little bit. It's been suggested we have to educate the residents. Okay, I'm open to suggestions as to how we do that. And it's been, I've heard, well, what's plan B, actually, I think, it's the home rule, 2 referendums, the street bond. What's plan E, from my perspective, as to how to get money in the village? But what's the alternative if this fails? What are we gonna do? So, we're not gonna make a decision here, but let me put that out. Who's got an idea? What do you think? What do you think we should do in terms of educating the people? What do you think we should do in terms of the alternative if this bond referendum doesn't fail? The people don't want to approve it because they don't want to have property taxes increased in order to pay off the street bond. Trustee.
Well, your point about education, I think not having the years is gonna make that job harder for us or harder for the community. There's a bigger difference between the 10 and 20 years, right, it's double roughly. So I think people always wanna know, what's it mean to me? And if we're talking, $150 a year versus $300 a year on a $250,000 house, I'm using rough numbers, I think that makes our job harder. So I guess we'll have to give them a range
We have
that
to,
it could be.
if I remember right, in the scenario document, there was a page that talked about what, what the cost would be for each of the scenarios and what the annual hit to the village would be based on 10, 15, or 20 years. So yeah, I agree with you, we have to provide them with that information and explain, we can't guarantee you this is what we're gonna get. If we could do that, we would have done it already. But I agree with that. I intend, obviously we'll write neutral-based fact information for use in the smoke signals to tell the people, the plan's online, right? What else?
But
Trustee,
I think,
Trustee Wall.
thank you. I think we're all in agreement that it's either going to be 10 or 15, and, we can have a debate at some point down the road as to which one is more advantageous to the residents. I think all of us are open-minded in those numbers and those ranges, and I think a lot of it, as you said, Mayor, comes down to what the rates are at that time. So I would assume you could advocate, unless someone's advocates the wrong word, you could indicate that we were probably inclined to make it 10 or 15, depending on what is more advantageous to the residents. But that's my understanding of what we all said.
Trustee Hinshaw?
Regarding your plan E, and that's for the sake of argument, what do we do if it fails? I believe that there are some cuts that we can make. Asking for the legal information is one step for me to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. My gut tells me that we're paying too much for legal fees, no offense, Rick, but that's my gut. As you know, some of new trustees, or all the new trustees, have come on board without getting paid. If we were to pass something like that, that's another $20,000 or $23,000. So I think there are some cuts that we can make, but I also think there's not enough cuts to pay for the roads that need to be done. So I think the best idea that I have heard out of the solutions would be the vehicle sticker increase. And I'm not a fan of raising taxes, but that is one that I think makes some sense, because in theory, if you have a vehicle, you're on the roads, and so I can kind of put those two together. I have worked some with Frank, and I think we have ways to go on that vehicle sticker program information. I know that you did the road inspections and, some of that, so I think there's work in that regard, but so that's one idea as far as raising revenue.
Can I ask you a question?
And the next step is the letters that will be going out.
Do you think for the February board meeting, you could have a report as to what remember I had asked you to look at that? You've gotten the information?
I've asked Frank for it. The 955 vehicles that are not paid is about a year and a half old, so I've asked for the current information, and I haven't got that yet.
Which we finally got together, that's why we're going to be preparing.
So, depends on when I get it, I might be able to have
Okay,
some.
well, if you can,
Yeah.
could we shoot for February?
Yeah,
So we
I'd
can
love
have
to
that
do that.
with, perhaps a proposal is what we can do in terms of how do we address the people who are not buying the vehicle
Yes.
stickers?
And part of that was enforcement. Frank, I don't know that you've got the answer about if somebody doesn't get a sticker, can we go to their home, give them a citation? If they haven't paid and they come in, can we go back retroactive 2 years? So some of those
That's
questions.
right, those are the hard ones, but I think we've learned by doing these little roadblocks, that if we really managed that and kicked it into high gear, that's one of the first.
And maybe with the letters. So,
Yeah.
Rich, I'd be happy to give that a shot again, depending on when I get.
Because a few little roadblocks we did seem to be okay, now we would just ramp that up.
And if I remember right, the road inspections yielded about 4 citations, is that the right
Well,
word?
in different areas.
Yeah,
so
but about 4 an hour.
Yeah,
Is citation the right word?
yes.
And then,
And some people came in when they heard that this was happening,
right,
but we haven't ramped it up, it was more of a,
and those citations, those people didn't buy stickers, but we expect that they will, when they have to pay the citation.
Oh,
or what?
they came in with the citation on the plan too.
They did, okay.
I just had a couple of ideas. I share some of the similar ideas of Mr. Hinshaw. I think that all of our professional services agreement, including legal and engineering, need to be relooked at. I think they need to go a pay-as-you-go instead of a retainer situation. I think we can look at that together and look at the FOIA requests that we've seen. The hours are all under the number of hours we pay for versus the hourly rate. Most months we're not using all of those. I don't know about Burke if that's the same case or not. The other idea that we had, besides having all elected officials in commission and commissioner roles, is that they be no paid, non-paid positions or paid a very small meeting fee, which was about $25, I think, in 1990, before 1990. Looking at some of the other ideas that we also could look at, could be, again, looking at the overtime, which we've already discussed, both in public works and in the police department. We looked at that and using part-time people. The other thing is zero-based budgeting, and we've had this discussion in other organizations. You know, we look at budgets year over year and say, here's what we did last year, what do we need to do this year? And I think that for the finance committee, having that exercise, people may not think it's practical to do this zero-based budget, but it has people go back to their departments and say, what do we need to do to operate our labor and all of the services that we need in the current environment for the village? Not what we just did last year, what do we need to operate those services? So I call that sort of going back to a zero-based budget, starting over and looking at what do we need to do to operate these departments in an effective way. I also think that looking at sharing labor in intergovernmental relationships with other departments like the Highland Sanitary District, which is less than 2 miles away from our water department, we could look at opportunities similarly to that, not for everything, but for billing and potentially for management of those systems. So I think that I bet if we spend an hour together, I'm not saying they're all good ideas, some of them may be horrible ideas, but I think we really have to put our heads together to figure out how we're going to try to go forward. I know Brian has brought up his idea about home rule, and we discussed that there are ways. I know that we've done some investigation with Oak Brook Terrace and another municipality that did home rule and capped the real estate part of that. They did not allow that to be considered in home rule. So they made an amendment to the home rule to make it more palatable. So I think there are a range of things that we have to do. The revenue side, the cell towers, when the contracts have to be renewed. I saw a renewal schedule for that from Frank. Can we offer more services on those current, market those to any other organizations? Can we do anything on the revenue side regarding cell, infrared, or other things that those towers could be used for? You know, I'm sure other people have ideas. And have we asked our employees their opinions about revenue and cost? Have we ever asked them for their ideas as well? So I think if we all put our heads together, I would think we could come up with what I call, I sort of call it, I hate to use the word austerity plan. Some people use it triage, let's look at triage. I think we've got to put our heads together and get very creative about what we do, not only now, but what we're gonna do in the future. Because I don't think it can't be business as usual anymore. We just aren't gonna be able to do that. And if we don't end up with the money, it's gonna be one of those things where we're not gonna have any money to do really anything, right? Basically, maybe 1, 2 roads, maybe.
That's the Plan B or Plan E, whatever you want, label you want to give to it, but.
I think we have to consistently show people that we're gonna make little changes, little things that we can do, maybe some big things we can do too. Those are probably gonna take a little longer to happen, but I think we have to show them that we have a plan.
On the Plan E, a couple of other ideas is, I think it was Matt's suggestion, to try to hold police overtime by 10% this year. Another, maybe to bump that to 20%. It doesn't raise a lot, but that could raise another 10 or 15,000. On to Amy's idea, I'm not a fan of home rule yet, but I've heard what Brian